Yeah. Well, I mean, what choice have you got? I mean, you're the guy who knows what he's on about, and if you're saying, right, a bit of tough love's good for you, then of course, I've got no choice but to take it on the chin. And in retrospect, taking it on the chin and listening to what you had to say to me was a really important part of me turning this journey around to a more positive approach.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gasiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Bill from recoveryafterstroke.com. This is episode 134. And in this episode, we will be talking about overcoming anxiety, how stroke affects your identity, nutrition that supports the brain, the benefits of sleep, and plenty more. And my guest today is Scott Stevens, who was a fit and active 44-year-old who experienced a cryptogenic stroke about 6 months ago before this recording. Scott, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thanks, Bill.
Scott, tell us a little bit about what happened to you, how you became a stroke survivor.
Well, my stroke happened in August 2020, just to cap off a wonderful year for everybody. But I returned from a bike ride early one morning and was sitting down to have a coffee, and then all of a sudden became confused and all those classic stroke symptoms. Weakness down my left side, and pretty quickly realised that something was not right, and I suffered from an ischemic stroke. So I had a clot, which they still don't know what it was caused by. So I guess I was very unlucky. I guess you can call that a cryptogenic stroke.
Yep.
I was just really unlucky. So off to hospital. I spent 3 weeks in hospital, and slowly during that time regained my movement, and have been working on that ever since. So that's basically the story.
So it's February 2021 now. So you're about 6 months beyond stroke. What were some of the things that you had to deal with and still are dealing with beyond stroke? What did it leave you with? What kind of deficits and challenges?
Well, I mean, you and I had this we messaged about this during the week, but I guess I wouldn't really call them deficits at the moment, but I do have some odd feeling on my left side, which doesn't leave me at all. And certainly fatigue is an issue, as I know it is with a lot of people. But that's basically what it's left me with. I have to be very careful in managing my fatigue.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm back at work and operating in that regard.
And sometimes you say that you have these kind of zoned out days. Can you describe those a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I think they're past now, but the period of 3 or 4 months after the stroke was perhaps the time when I had that feeling of being zoned out. I guess you could call it really bad brain fog, where I would feel like I was in a room with everybody, and it was like watching a movie, but not a particularly good one. Really odd feeling. And in retrospect, I guess I can put that down to anxiety related to the stroke, and not being particularly well in a mental health space, which has certainly become a lot better now. I sought help, and yeah.
So you're a pretty healthy guy, you're active, and all of a sudden you're recovering from an ischemic stroke. What's at stake for you in the time after your diagnosis and when you've come home from hospital?
Yeah, well, I guess I was a healthy guy. I was right into my cycling, and I played a lot of sport. I'm a PE teacher, so really that's what was at stake, was my livelihood, my identity as a PE teacher and as a guy who was pretty fit and active. And all of a sudden, that's been taken away, and I'm sure that will come back, because I'm headed. I think I'm tracking in the right direction, but there certainly is a period of time where there's a lot of uncertainty, and you don't know what the future brings, and that in itself creates anxiety, and the anxiety really feeds on itself. And that was my period of time when I got home, as I was very uncertain about what the future would bring for me.
You did a lot of work with your doctors. You had a lot of support. You had people that you were seeing regularly about your mental health challenges in that time, because it's pretty common for people to struggle through stroke in the physical, but also emotional and mental way.
Mm.
At some point, but you kind of noticed that there was necessary to make some kind of a change in the way that you were approaching things. Why was it important for you to make a change in the way you were approaching things?
Well, my family's really important to me, and because my mental health was spiraling, really, I wasn't engaging with my children in the way I would like, and I really think, if I'm honest, it was impairing my ability to recover because I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't resting effectively, and I just wasn't thinking clearly, and I knew that if I wanted to recover or make some recovery, I needed to look after my mental health. So I spoke to my wife and we sought help. And I think actually, Bill, that you were a catalyst there because I remember getting in touch with you via my occupational therapist. And I remember you suggesting that perhaps I would benefit from seeking some help around my mental health space.
Yeah.
And that was a real catalyst for me. Um,
So
as soon as I sought that help, things turned around.
yeah, I know you started to turn around. What
Yeah.
I'm curious about was, in that moment, in the moments or the days or the months before you made a change, was there something preventing you from making that change to start thinking about this as a holistic kind of recovery rather than I've just got to get my ischemic stroke sorted?
Yeah, well, I think because I mean, obviously, I've never had a stroke, and this is really uncharted territory for me. I mean, I thought I would just sort of spontaneously and naturally recover, and then I became aware of your approach, and that was a more holistic approach, and the need to really get everything in line, and then the recovery can get some momentum,
Yeah.
and that was the turning point. Yeah.
Did you have a
Well,
timeline in your head about when that all needed to happen by?
yeah, well, that's the trap I fell into is because I thought I wanted a definitive answer around when I would be better. And that was the mistake I fell into because every stroke is different. And I would ask people who I knew who had strokes, I would ask them, how long did it take you to recover? When did you get this back? When did you get that back? And of course, they can't give me an answer that relates to me because every stroke is different. All I knew that was that I needed to start looking after those things that would contribute to recovery, and talking to people is the only way you can develop that knowledge. And I guess in many ways, I've developed that knowledge by talking to you.
Yeah. What what does it mean to your life when you make that kind of a change? When you shift your perspective from going, I'm just going to get my head sorted, to I'm going to uh, look at the whole me and work on the entire me. How does that impact your life in a positive way?
Well, I think you start to embed behaviors. I mean, forget about the stroke, but you start to embed behaviors into your life that you can carry on beyond recovery. I guess. I mean, I guess the recovery doesn't stop; it continues. It's a bit of a journey, isn't it? I mean, you've indicated this. You're 9 years out. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm 9
Yeah.
years out this month. Yeah,
Yeah. So, as you well know, it continues and continues. You don't just get to 12 months and go, right, I'm fixed. And I think I've got behaviours in place now where already I'm seeing a difference in the way I relate to my family, the way I approach things, and like certainly de-stressing and relaxing and building in meditation and effective sleep habits and sleep hygiene and good dietary practices.
mm,
And they're things that have already made a difference, stroke aside.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well done. How old were you when you had the stroke?
44.
Yeah, too young. It's never too. There's never a right age for a stroke, is there?
No.
44 is too young, man.
Yeah.
What was your typical day filled with?
Pre-stroke or post-stroke?
Yeah, pre-stroke.
Pre-stroke. Well, pre-stroke, I would typical day would be getting up very early in the morning, heading out for a on the bike for some exercise, and then I would return, breakfast with the family, and my wife and I are both teachers, and our kids go to the same school that we teach at, so we would all head off together. So it was a busy schedule. Um, so that was a typical day for me. So, and it hasn't changed a whole lot. Like, I'm not teaching at the moment. I'm in another role at the school, which has been great for my recovery. But my great hope is to get back to teaching, but not
Uh,
to get back to a sort of life where it's just so high paced that you can't keep up and you don't know what's going on.
yeah. How long were you in China before the stroke happened?
2 years.
You're coming to us from China, so it's
Yeah.
a little different. Do you feel like it's a little different in China than it would have been if you were at home in Australia? Do you have a different uh,
Mm.
kind of process towards the way you're looking after yourself because you're not home around family, friends, all that kind of stuff? You guys are
Yeah, I
not
think so. I
isolated,
think we
but
just, yeah. Well, I think isolated is actually not far from the truth.
okay.
I mean, I went to hospital. They did a great job of saving my life. I mean, it was a serious stroke. It was a massive stroke. But what's really interesting is that you don't have that ability to relate to the doctors in a way that you would in Australia and ask to get answers to the questions that you want answers to. I mean, their approach was certainly. I made a pretty good recovery in the first month or so, and I went back for my follow up, and my neurologist, who did, I must admit, I will give him credit. He did a great job in saving my life the day of the stroke. Um, he did all the right things, but he certainly didn't fill me with encouragement when it came to my recovery. He was particularly pessimistic, and that seems to be the way that things happen here.
Yeah. And that's the last
Yeah.
thing you need when you're recovering from a stroke. You want a little bit of hope at the end of the tunnel, is that not right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, and I think you have to provide that hope for yourself. And I guess that's where what my recovery looked like, or still looks like. I'm doing it myself
Yeah.
because you don't have access to the allied health that you would in Australia.
Yeah.
Um,
So, post stroke, and this is probably a bit of a difficult question in that there's maybe a lot of challenges, but what was the single biggest challenge you faced post stroke, do you feel? And bearing in mind now that you're 6 months out now, but um, it wasn't that long ago that you were only 1 month out and 2 months out. So I'm probably keen to hear about what it was like at those first couple of months.
well, I guess my biggest challenge was having been used to having complete control of my body. I was having to rebuild from almost scratch, from the ground up, and I'm not a particularly patient person.
Mm.
And I think that has been my biggest challenge is being patient, forcing myself to be patient and know that this will take a long time
Yeah,
and trying to find positives along the way and not get mired down in the doom and gloom.
yeah. There's a lot of talk around, um, delaying gratification and the benefits that people experience when they delay gratification. Are you somebody that perhaps previously didn't really delay gratification?
Well, I guess I could because, but there certainly wasn't at stake what's at stake now. Because if I rush in now and I'm too full on, then I'm just going to fatigue and it impairs my recovery.
Yeah,
So I've certainly learnt that there's nothing wrong with delaying gratification and just being patient.
yeah. What would you say helped you with the most?
Well, certainly, I mean, Billy, you probably got sick of me sending you messages in that third and fourth month because I mean I was terrified. I'm not afraid to admit that I was scared. And knowing and talking to you and being able to say to you, listen, I'm feeling like this, and this is what I'm really tackling at the moment. And for you to say, don't worry, mate, that's quite normal. You'll work your way through it. There's better days ahead. Was really reassuring, and that actually got me through a fairly dark period. And
Yeah,
that enabled me to sort of sort through the mess. And I don't know whether you recall, there was a period over Christmas just been where I got in contact with you quite a bit because I was really struggling.
mm,
And I think that's so important, being able to talk to people about what's going on and connect with people who know. I mean, I certainly, I mean, I know I'm realistic enough to know that you can't give me an answer in terms of my recovery,
mm.
but just for you to be able to say, listen, it sounds familiar and you will get through it, that hope. I mean, I guess you offered me hope.
Yeah.
that things would improve. Yeah.
Why was it important for you to have somebody there that can answer your questions, if not immediately, because I never answered them immediately always, but
You were pretty close.
yeah, as close as I can possibly be
Yeah,
to
yeah,
immediate.
yeah,
Why was it important to have that there? How does it change things for you?
yeah. Well, I think I'll preface it a little bit. It's important to have somebody who's slightly removed from the immediate situation, which I guess you are in a way.
Mm,
Because I was just saying to a colleague yesterday, I'm almost at that point where I feel like I'm talking about the stroke too much, and you don't want to be bombarding people with stroke chat, and it's not really good for me either, because all it means is that I'm dwelling in the stroke and I'm not moving forward.
yeah,
Whereas when I'm speaking to you, I can tell you how I'm feeling. You give me an answer, and to be really honest, there's been a couple of times where you've fired back at me and said, "Listen, things could be absolutely worse, mate. You need to be a bit more grateful." And I know you're smiling, and but I think there's value in that as well, because I mean, this could be a lot worse, and I think having that gratitude, whether it be developed via something like you telling me, really, mate, you need to have a look at yourself. You've been a little bit negative, and if I develop that, just having that gratitude, it helps you understand that there is hope,
mm,
but you need to work for it. You can't. Woe is me, and thinking about how unfair this is just does not work in this situation, and that's what you've taught me.
yeah. I was doing
Yeah,
the soft love, soft love, soft love, tough love,
yeah,
and
that's right.
every once in a while you need a bit of tough love, and that's only because what needs to happen is we need to get you thinking about all the good things that have come, all the
Yeah,
positives that have happened, all the things that you have overcome, and stop focusing on the things that haven't.
yeah,
Because focusing on those tend to get you stuck there. And what I liked about you was that you're really comfortable in me giving you that tough love, and that you didn't take it personally, and you knew that it was about me just trying to jolt you out of one of your states. And I think it worked well, and I'm glad that
mm,
you didn't take it personally and didn't feel oh, here's another person who's not listening to me or annoyed by me or whatever. So it was really good that you also
mm,
took it on the chin, so to speak.
yeah. Well, I mean, what choice have you got? I mean, you're the guy who knows what he's on about, and if you're saying, right, a bit of tough love's good for you, then of course, I've got no choice but to take it on the chin. And in retrospect, taking it on the chin and listening to what you had to say to me was a really important part of me turning this journey around to a more positive approach.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. It's that opportunity for you to um, get your curiosity sorted, and then in the really difficult times, actually get some really good answers,
Mm,
because that's that's how I become curious about what I can do to support myself, and then curiosity evades me, and then I get stuck
mm,
in a really difficult time, and if I don't
mm.
seek out help, then I can't get that answer, or I can't get that puzzle, the piece of the puzzle to move forward, and I get stuck there. And then when I do get the
Yeah,
piece of the puzzle to move forward, then curiosity kicks in again, and then when I'm curious, then I'm in control of the recovery rather than
yeah,
me
that's right.
relying on somebody else. Who else did you go to before you got to me that kind of
Yeah,
helped, but not really, with what you specifically needed from me?
yeah. Well, I had a good friend who I went to school with in Australia who had a stroke around the time that you did. I think you 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was around the same time, and I guess there was a bit of a disconnect between what I needed him to tell me and where he was coming from. I mean, he was well removed from his stroke like you are, but he certainly gave me tough love, but probably at the wrong times when I was really
Uh,
in a in an emotive state. Um, whereas Bill, you just seem to have that timing. The tough love was when I needed it, and when I was in a frame of mind to be able to handle it. And I think I may have relayed that to you, that I really felt like the people I was talking to back home did not understand what I was going through.
Yeah. It did sound to me like your friend kind of had a very different experience to stroke than we did, and kind of got away
Yeah,
with it a lot easier than we did. I know that stroke's serious either way, but it seems like
yeah,
he made a different recovery and therefore was not able to relate to the type of recovery that you're making.
yeah. Well, his recovery was quite quick, really, compared to yours and mine. And I think maybe, if I'm really honest, there was a little bit of not jealousy, but a little bit of why can't my recovery be quicker?
Mm.
And yeah, I got to hospital quickly, and I'm just, I got my problem was I got fixated on, I got to hospital quickly and I got treated quickly. So why aren't I making a really quick recovery? And that's not how it rolls.
Yeah,
Um, anyway,
that's all right. Remember early on when we were connecting after we got introduced by David, um, and we were chatting a little bit, and then I kind of put the hard word on you, and I said, "Mate, maybe you should take up one of the coaching packages. What do you think
hmm.
about that? What made you feel comfortable to connect with me?"
Well, I think certainly the fact that when I reached out to you, this is prior to me taking on the coaching package, that you were quick to get back to me and say, let's have a chat. And I think just the similarity between our stories and the fact that you understood where I was coming from and the fact that you knew that perhaps I needed some one on one help was, and you had that insight, that sort of resonated with me quite a bit. And I thought, well, there's nothing to lose here. And nothing to lose, and there's plenty to gain by using your experience and your approach to recovery.
What were the three things that you are taking action on to achieve your milestones?
Well, I guess I'm making sure I look after myself physically, and my approach is if I look after myself physically and get my fitness back and my love of movement. I've just actually come back from a run, but and so that's one thing. So making sure I continually moving and rewiring those pathways and training the brain to move again.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. The second thing is certainly, and I've got this from you, is nutrition and just avoiding all those things which the brain doesn't need, like grains and wheat
Alcohol.
products and alcohol. Well, we've had this conversation. Um, well, yeah, certainly alcohol and sugar. I've avoided sugar based on conversations I've had with you. And attending to my need for sleep has been really important.
Yeah.
And I find that if I don't get enough sleep and I don't attend to my fatigue, then I really notice a flare up of the symptoms and I don't feel well. And if I don't feel well, I start to get negative again.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you become aware of the cycle that gets you into that bit of a negative
Oh, yeah.
zone.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's brilliant. Getting sleep, if I could make anyone do anything, if I could make them do anything, it would be to get
Yeah.
them to go to bed and sleep more. And that would be the one thing that I would make them do because that does do that. It breaks that circuit of the negative spiral. It starts the circuit off for the positive spiral. And
Yeah.
I love the sound of the things that you've done. What was the big aha moment? Have you had one?
Well, I don't know whether there's been one moment because I don't think there is one. There's not singular moments in recovery like this. I don't think I found that out already. But
Yeah.
what I did notice during the Christmas break, we've just had a Christmas break like a month ago. I went away with my family and we spent time together. And the aha moment, I guess, if there was one, was, hey, I can still do the things that I really love. And I did them, like running and cycling and spending time with friends and family. Yeah, it feels different, but I can still do it. And at that point, during that time, there was a 3 week period where I just started to feel a lot better. And I went back to work after Christmas, and people were saying to me, listen, you look a lot better, you sound a lot better. And I reckon this is a real confidence thing. So I gained confidence, and then you start to keep doing those things that have contributed to that better feeling.
Yeah.
So since I've gone back to work, I've really started to make sure that I'm sleeping well. eating well, hydration is huge as well. I know you asked for three. There's a fourth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hydra- hydration is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the fast wins that you got when we first started chatting? Those little things that got the momentum going. What were some of those little easy ones to tick off?
Uh, well, I think keeping a diary of what the good things, that was a really positive thing that I did. So I started listing things I couldn't do yesterday, and things I can do today. And very quickly it starts to build up to a bigger picture. And I think very early on when we spoke, you talked about maybe keeping a journal or a diary of where the recovery's tracking. And I still do that. Yeah. And my colleagues at work have started helping me out. So I'll go into work, and this is really good, quite good fun actually. And they'll get post-it notes and they'll ask me, okay, so this week, what have you achieved? And I'll tell them, and then I'll go in on the Monday, and then my computer screen will be full of post-it notes. It's like my wall of positivity.
Wow,
And
man.
it sounds really corny, but it works because I can't help but see the things that I'm achieving.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Often stroke survivors don't start noticing the positives. They notice all the things that they can't do. And fair enough, there's probably a lot of things that stroke survivors can't do. So you can understand that. But that takes away from the wins that people have had. And it's really good to get
absolutely.
reminders, wherever those reminders come from. And if you can make a habit of reminding yourself, it's even better. But the fact that your colleagues are getting involved, thank them for.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. It's really good.
So before stroke, you had a reality, you had a kind of a life reality and the things that you did. Then you had a stroke, and then you had a new sort of substituted reality of uncertainty, of challenges. Since coaching started, what's your reality like now?
Well, it's certainly a lot more positive, and I feel like, I mean, nobody can take me back to pre-stroke. I know that I now understand that can't happen. I mean, and to battle that, to create friction there, keep wanting to go back to pre-stroke, I think would be. And I was talking to a guy last night from England, actually, who's a running coach and is back running, and he had a stroke 2 years ago, very similar to mine. And he was saying that he feels like if he keeps going back to wanting to be like he was before stroke and battling that, marry that up against his new reality, it's almost insanity. It would drive you nuts. So
Yes.
I'm trying to be comfortable with my new approach to life.
Yeah. And
And I mean, who knows, Bill? I might get back to a point where this recovery takes me to a point where I'm really comfortable with my new normal. And I think that's the key, to be comfortable with the new normal.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And going back to what life was like before stroke is the time that stroke was about to happen. It was just before stroke. So it's probably not a good place to go back to. We need to go
Mm.
somewhere else, right?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
So now that you've achieved these things, what are you looking to do now? What else is on the horizon?
Well, I'm really looking forward to continuing to feel good because, I mean, let's face it, I mean, post stroke, the couple of months you feel pretty miserable. You're tired, you're worried about the future. And then when you make a turn and you start to see momentum in recovery, it feels really good and you feel like you can build on something. That's not to say that I don't have moments now where I still feel overwhelmed. I mean, I'm only 6 months out, and I'm sure in the next 6 months I'll feel overwhelmed at stages too. But I think what I want to achieve really is to be able to help people who are in their early phases of recovery, whether that be talking to them and offering, I guess, what little advice I can give, given that I'm so early on in my journey. But as you well know, and as I've found out, talking to people is so cathartic and so important in the journey,
Yeah.
because it's a lonely place. Post stroke is a lonely place.
Yeah, it can be, man. It can be. People don't
Yeah,
understand you, and
yeah.
family doesn't know what it's like. And fair enough, we wouldn't want them to know what it's like. So, yeah,
No,
that makes
absolutely not.
sense. What advice would you
Yeah.
give to somebody who's in the same position you were in back then?
Well, I mean, without sounding like an advertisement for your services, Bill, I would say they need to make contact with you and try and get that one-on-one chat going and try and gain an understanding of what they can do to take control. Because as soon as I felt like I was in control, I mean, it's really hard to articulate what that feeling was, to feel like you're in control again of your recovery.
Yeah.
I mean, to tell a little bit of a story, I remember sitting at my desk at work and my colleagues in the office will tell you there was a period of time where I would have looked just petrified because I was so scared about what was ahead of me. And and even though I had lots of people around me who understood that I had a stroke, they certainly didn't understand what I was going through, and it was a very lonely place. So my advice would be to reach out and talk to people. Certainly talk to people who might be just a little bit removed from your immediate situation, because then you can really speak your mind and feel comfortable.
Yeah. Good advice, man. Is there anything
Yeah.
that, looking back now, you would have done differently early on?
Ooh, it's a long time ago, and my head was not a bit cloudy, to be honest. I think I would have taken, like I read early on, when I was in hospital, I did a lot of reading about what stroke recovery was like and maybe what I could expect. And I guess what I would have done differently is being far more proactive in addressing the mental health side of things. Getting help very early. I mean, if I'm matter of fact with everybody, but and I'm happy to share this with friends as well now. I was depressed and I was so anxious that it was impeding my recovery. I'm sure I probably could have, if I got onto that a lot earlier, my recovery, my turning point would have been a lot earlier as well. But in hindsight, I would have taken that seriously because I read about it, and because at that immediate moment, I didn't feel like I was in a bad place. I didn't take it seriously. And it is to be taken seriously because it can hamper your recovery.
Yeah. It is one of those things that people don't realize they're in that state at that time. They don't realize they might be experiencing a little bit of depression. So if somebody happens to be kind enough to tell you and risk your wrath, then maybe pay attention and listen to them, is
Mm,
basically what you're saying. And then seek help and get curious about why they said that, and then maybe seek help a little bit earlier rather than later. Because if 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 anything's going to come out of seeking help, it's just support. That's all that's going to come of it, nothing
yeah.
else.
And reassurance, in many ways, reassurance.
Yeah, reassurance is something I can relate to too. It's what I offer people is what I needed 9 years ago when I was going through it, and I didn't have it. So I figured there's definitely an opportunity for people to experience more of the
Yeah.
things that you got, and if they know where to go to get that, then they may
Mm,
a, a better turning point, a quicker turning point
mm.
in the way they approach their recovery.
Yeah. Well, I've gained a lot out of, you know, signing up to do one-on-one coaching with you, because there's so much more. And I think I emailed you yesterday about the guests you've had on your show.
Mm,
I mean, you really do get exposed to courageous, really brave people.
yeah,
And there's been moments where I've watched your uh, podcasts and your interviews where I've felt like that is perhaps the best approach to recovery that I've ever seen. With a range of your guests, because they've lived it.
yeah,
And I think the number one thing, though, Bill, we've spoken about a lot of stuff. The number one thing that I've got from you is reassurance during a very scary time, and I'm really grateful for that.
yeah. My pleasure. We spoke. You're referring to Duncan Campling from
Oh
episode
yes.
133, who is overcoming locked-in syndrome. And on the interview, I had to speak to him with a recorded voice that he answered my questions, and it was all pre-recorded.
Mm.
I asked him the questions, and then he pre-recorded them and then sent me the answers because he can't speak it. he has dysarthria, and his vocal cords don't operate properly. So he has a adapted iPad that has a British accent that talks
Yeah.
the way that he would have talked, he said previously.
Yeah. So despite what he's been through, the fact that he was smiling and laughing with you, I found just unbelievable. And that really will stay with me, I think.
Yeah, he's a good guy. We had a
Yeah.
laugh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's do a little bit of a recap. You went from feeling quite anxious and quite uh, uh, concerned about what the future holds. You did
Mm.
go through dark times there, experiencing, depressive symptoms and all those types of things. And you've kind of moved from that to feeling in control of your recovery. You've certainly taken your mental health seriously, and you're
Mm.
continuing to do so. You've taken care of things like your nutrition, and you're getting active and moving as much as possible, and you're sleeping, and
Mm.
you're paying attention to your fatigue and how you're feeling about
Mm.
your energy levels during the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I certainly know that if I do too much and I haven't, well, the weekend is really the time where I bank that sleep, and that sets me up for the week. If I don't get enough rest, if I have late nights, and you've indicated to me that during your recovery, and this is great advice, that you had to prioritize where you could put your time, and that's what I'm becoming better and better at doing that. Like, you can't go out every night and have dinner with friends, and you can't at the yeah at the risk of losing sleep, you can't do that, and it may not be forever. I mean,
That's right. It's
but it
definitely
could be
not.
for a long time.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
definitely not. It does change. So early on,
Mm.
we would leave parties and events early, and now
Mm.
we can stay a bit longer. It doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah.
I just know that next day I'm not going to have too much planned or too much
Mm.
to do, because if I wake up at my regular wake up time, which is 6:30 to 7 o'clock, no matter what time I go to bed, that's what time I wake up.
Mm.
I know that if I've had a late night, that next day better be a light day. It better be a day where I don't have much.
Yeah.
So I just plan for that late night, and it works out well. And the following day, I just chill out and go to bed a bit earlier.
Yeah, and I think it's really important there to think about one thing I've learned, and certainly my wife has been fantastic with this, is she knows that fatigue is such a big thing with this recovery, that she has helped develop routines she's developed routines in our house to enable me. I'm really grateful for this. Enable me to get enough rest. So, and it means that I'm in bed really early, and far earlier than I would have been in the past. And I'm not around to help all the time. But if I can get the recovery right, I will be. In the future, I'll be as good as I can be. And I think she understands that. She's learning patience as well.
Yeah, it
It's
does.
huge, mate, as you know.
Yeah,
It's a
stroke does.
team effort.
It tests everybody. It tests everybody in the family.
Mm.
So, mate, look, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and your journey with me. It has been, and it will continue to be, a pleasure to support you and work with you. So, thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, Bill. I hope more people have the chance to engage with you in the way that I have.
Thanks, mate. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If Scott's story has resonated with you and you would like to know more about recovery after stroke coaching, simply go to recoveryafterstroke.com/coaching, where you can find out how you can also get recovery after stroke coaching, and who knows, maybe take your recovery to the next level as well.
Discover how to heal your brain after stroke. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com. Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gasiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.